Today I will be reviewing the nonfiction book No One Cares About Crazy People by Ron Powers. This book is about people with severe mental illness, specifically schizophrenia, and different aspects of how they are seen or treated by others in the society. Powers uses many historical events to show the progression of how people with mental illness are viewed over a large span of time. Powers also uses news stories and media stories, as well as his own experiences having two sons with schizophrenia, to help the reader see why it holds true that in this day and age, no one cares about crazy people. Before I delve any deeper into this book, I would like to discuss the couple of aspects I did not specifically like. From the beginning, when I chose to review this book, I had one question. What does Powers mean by crazy? There are so many different connotations of this word that it is hard to understand which he is referring to before reading the entire book and really pondering this throughout. I was able to come to a conclusion of what I believe Powers meant by this term. I understood this to mean people who are misunderstood and outcast due to mental illness or mental disability. Outcast in this definition is not just meaning simply unaccepted, but unaccepted by society as a whole and institutionalized, or whose families are urged to institutionalize them due to differences caused by mental illness or mental disability. This definition may seem very harsh and even offensive to some people, but it is my understanding that this is what Powers was striving to achieve with this term for the purposes of driving readers' thought processes to really figure out how they see the institutionalized and help us to realize that in most cases, including my own, people believe that institutionalized people are truly crazy in some way, shape, or form. As I stated, I was bothered by this from the beginning, but in the end, I really enjoyed it and was glad that Powers did this because it helped me to figure out my own beliefs and feelings on institutionalized people and how this impacts me. The only other aspect of this book that I truly disliked was the amount of raw history given in this book. This information was given in a story format, yet I still found myself wishing that there had been less or that it had been broken up more evenly with Powers' own personal experiences or stories from the news and media. This is especially difficult for me because I have ADHD, and so I found it very difficult when reading the history to keep straight the different historical figures and their contributions. The story format used in this book did help me be able to understand a slightly larger amount of information than I would in a regular history class, but I still found myself struggling with some of the information and how it contributed to the book as a whole. I chose this book for my review for one main reason. As I said, I have ADHD, which is technically a mental disorder, though most people wouldn't consider it as such. This is what drew me to this book for the pure fact that I would be able to see similarities and differences between the extremely mild disorder that I have and the extremely severe disorder schizophrenia that is widely discussed in this book. Before I get into my comparisons, I want to talk about what I liked about this book. In the first sentence of the book, in the preface, the author says, "This is the book I promised myself I would never write." I found this lead into the book to instantly hook me and make me want to read more. As a reader, this really helped me to dive deeper and analyze what Powers was saying to try to figure out how what he was talking about impacted his life and how this would impact his decision to not want to write this book but cause him to ultimately end up writing and publishing it. This is also important because the way that Powers explains this tends to show that he truly doesn't want people to enjoy the content of this book, but rather to be able to analyze and learn from the content that he puts forth in this book. The other aspect of this book that I liked was how Powers used his own life experiences and those of his sons to show the deeper effects that schizophrenia and mental illness can have on not only the people living with these disorders, but also their family members. With this, I also enjoyed the news and media stories that he discussed that help elaborate more on these effects when analyzed together with his own experiences. This was generally engaging and helped me to see how, in most cases, outside of family, no one really does care about crazy people, at least not enough to try to make a change and help these people to live better lives. As I mentioned earlier, while reading this book, I did some comparing and contrasting with different similarities and differences between ADHD and schizophrenia. At one point, the author mentioned how both of his sons at one time or another went off of their medication, either because they felt as though they did not need it anymore, or because of unknown reasons. I can relate to this because there are times when I feel as though I do not need to take my medication because I will be able to focus without. But in all honesty, I probably cannot. Also, I feel as though my medication makes me not able to be myself because it takes away the goofy and scatterbrained parts of me that I feel make me who I am. One contrast between the two is that, related to this, with ADHD, I am able to reason with myself about the fact that my medication will wear off and I will always be myself no matter what. And that if I don't take my medication, I will not be able to show my capabilities in my coursework, and it will end up ruining my grades as a result of making the decision to not take my medication. But with people affected by schizophrenia, they are usually not able to do this, as shown by the death of Power's son Kevin. The last main point I am going to discuss is the differences between schizophrenia and ADHD in regards to their effects on family members of people living with these disorders. I, for one, do not see any large effects from my ADHD on my family. The only things I could think of is the fact that my parents have to purchase medication and oftentimes remind me to take my medication, and that sometimes my friends, family, and myself have to be able to recognize when I'm having trouble focusing and redirect me to a quiet place to learn, and sometimes give me incentives so that I am more likely to do my best work. Schizophrenia is very different as described in this book. The biggest difference that I saw is that families of people with schizophrenia often worry about their family member to an extreme level, whether it is due to not knowing where they are or what they will do next, or worrying about the stigma around schizophrenia and how people will perceive and react to them. This is seen in the book when Powers tells the media stories about people with schizophrenia, and that multiple of the stories ended in death for those people because bystanders or police officers jumped to conclusions about the person and took action for self-defense reasons. As one can probably tell simply through this review, Powers is definitely credible due to the fact that both of his sons either have or had schizophrenia, and that he has definitely done his research both through media and through history. Not to mention that he has won the Pulitzer Prize and written 14 previous novels. Everything considered, I truly found great interest in this book and would recommend it to anyone who wants to understand more about schizophrenia, mental institutions, or why it is believed by Powers that no one cares about crazy people. Thank you for watching.